This man debated a lineup of far-right conservatives under the guise of open debate. Let's talk about it. Jubilee has done it again. In their latest balanced political debate, they bravely gathered one progressive journalist, Mehdi Hassan, and sat him across from a lineup of far-right conservatives, including a man who is proudly identified as a fascist.
I think you could say I'm a fascist. Yeah, I am.
Because apparently in 2025, fascism isn't something that history has warned us about. No! It's just another fun political flavour to sample like oat milk or libertarianism. And people are eating this up. The debate has racked over 9 million views. Democracy may be crumbling, but at least it's trending. One of the debate's standout participants, our openly fascist, for the sake of semantics, I'm going to say friend, but he really isn't a friend. I ain't friends with fascists. He has since launched a GoFundMe to pay his bills because he's allegedly lost his job over these views. Because, you know, that might happen if you go on a million view platform and say, I'm a fascist.
Yeah, I am.
And this whole thing of launching a GoFundMe is fascinating because nothing screams I reject collectivism like asking strangers on the internet to collectivise their money for you. I thought we were against handouts and the state helping us, but, you know, sure. Whatever, let's just call that personal responsibility on his part. Now, Jubilee's whole brand is about middle ground conversations. You know, hear everyone out, find common humanity. And yet this video feels less like constructive dialogue and more like what happens when you give hate a microphone and call it discourse. Points are neither proven nor disproven, but are instead derailed, strawmanned, or spoken over in a tit-for-tat argument where applause is given when you tell an immigrant to go back to where he came from rather than actually debunking the claims that he makes. Which I will say, sometimes he doesn't even make those claims like that brilliantly, yet they still struggle to like debunk what he's actually said. So we have to ask, is Jubilee actually fostering critical engagement with dangerous ideologies, or have they just repackaged extremism as binge-worthy, advertiser-friendly content under the noble banner of free speech? Yeah, we're going there. Now, in the interest of maintaining a middle ground philosophy, Jubilee's whole format is built on the belief that if you stick a progressive in a room with far-right extremists, you'll get a healthy, democratic dialogue. Bit naive, isn't it? You know, the kind of conversation where one person says, I think healthcare is a human right, and another person says, well, I think certain people shouldn't exist, and Jubilee calls that a fair tie. On paper, this does sound noble, and I, for one, am kind of an advocate of trying to change people's minds and bring people onto, you know, the progressive side of politics or whatever. We are polarised. We need bridge building, and maybe if people talk to each other, we'd all hold hands and skip merrily around bipartisan understandings. But here's the thing. Not every ideological chasm has a bridge. Sometimes there's just a cliff, and Jubilee keeps dangling prospects off the edge in the name of balance. I've said it before, you cannot debate with someone who doesn't think you have the right to exist. You cannot debate genocide. Jubilee's idea of a neutral debate starts to break down when people platformed aren't just ideologically opposed to democracy, but also fundamentally ill-informed on history and politics and the complexities within certain events that are going on at the moment. In this single debate alone, one participant claims that Israel gave Palestinians Gaza a few decades ago, you know, completely disregarding the region's colonial and military history.
Israel just gave Gaza the land like a few decades ago? No.
Gaza was never Israel's to give. In fact, it wasn't the British Empire's to give either, but, you know, it was part of the British Mandate until 1948. Then it was occupied by Egypt from 1948 to 1967, and seized by Israel during the Six-Day War. Although Israel did withdraw its military and settlements in 2005, it maintained control over Gaza's borders, airspace, and maritime access, leading the UN and legal scholars alike to continue classifying it as an occupied territory. To suggest that Gaza was gifted erases decades of foreign control and Palestinian displacement. Another insisted that America is a white country, denying indigenous sovereignty and the reality of colonialism by saying that Native Americans also came from Asia.
I am Native American. Whites are Native Americans. What are you talking about?
What was happening before the 1500s?
There was indigenous people here that came here from
Do you know what
Asia.
indigenous means?
You know, as if 15,000-year-old migration patterns somehow equal European conquest and genocide. But, you know, Jubilee's format pretends that these statements deserve equal footing with factual rebuttals, blurring the lines between dialogue and historical revisionism. This is what media theorists call both-sidism, the illusion that presenting two ideas automatically makes something fair or neutral. It doesn't. As Chantal Mouffe has argued, apologies if I've butchered that pronunciation, democratic politics isn't about flattering every disagreement into a neutral middle. It's about recognising power and conflict, deciding which ideas we're willing to debate and which ones fundamentally reject the rules of debate itself. But Jubilee's brand of neutrality treats evidence-based democratic arguments as if they're just one opinion on the menu, you know, right next to authoritarianism. It ignores the obvious asymmetry. One side argues policy, and the other argues whether democracy should exist at all. Yet on Jubilee, they're all given equal weight, equal airtime, and equal legitimacy, all wrapped up in soothing pastels and ad-friendly thumbnails. It's not dialogue, it's false equivalence with good lighting. But there is a moral conundrum. You know, should we even be putting fascists on stage and calling it a debate? I've talked about this before, but political theorist Karl Popper has warned us about this with his paradox of intolerance. If society is endlessly tolerant, even of the intolerant or intolerant views, it risks being destroyed by them. Now, I've made a video on this previously about dealing with this on my own channel and why I refuse to debate certain things, but Mehdi seems to echo this sentiment too when he argues that he won't debate fascists.
I don't debate people who don't see me, A, as equal, no point, or B, support democracy because that would undermine the whole idea of the debate.
The logic goes like this. Let's say that sunlight, for example, is the best disinfectant. So, when we let the extremists talk, hopefully the sheer power of reason will melt their ideology like a fascist wax figure in July. Cute theory, but it's a shame about the actual evidence. Contemporary research on radicalisation shows that exposure doesn't necessarily deprogram extremism, it can actually cement it. It's all well and good making fun of absurd ideas in the hope that it will make other people think that they are absurd, but people don't want to question their ideas, they want them reaffirmed, and that's all that this is going to do. Repetition makes even these absurd ideas feel familiar, and familiarity breeds acceptance. When millions watch a debate where fascism is treated as just another bullet point in the marketplace of ideals, it doesn't get dismantled. It gets a bigger platform, a shinier thumbnail, and a fresh round of YouTube recommendations. The issue isn't just ignorance, it's how extremism turns actual humanitarian crises into white nationalist talking points. When Mehdi Hassan says that Trump's policies aid ethnic cleansing in Gaza, a far-right participant sidestepped entirely, crying that you're trying to genocide my own people.
You're actually trying to genocide my entire race, so what are you talking about?
A conversation about mass civilian casualties in Palestine was suddenly reframed as a debate about white genocide. You know, a fabricated demographic panic that right and far-right circles use to justify authoritarian policies. Even when Hassan dismantled these claims, the exposure risks normalising them. Viewers that are sympathetic to white nationalist rhetoric might leave thinking that these are legitimate concerns and counters to international human rights violations. It's giving I want to be oppressed so bad on the basis of my skin colour. And this is the core problem. Jubilee isn't disinfecting hate. It's repackaging it as entertainment. The debate stops being about dismantling dangerous rhetoric and starts being about keeping you watching long enough to sell you something. Jubilee's defenders may insist that airing extremist views is the best way to challenge them. You know, let sunlight disinfect fascism, let rational arguments win. But in practice, Jubilee's debate format often works less like a disinfectant and more like a greenhouse, not neutralising fascism, but helping it grow. First, there's normalisation. Putting a self-proclaimed fascist at a round table with Mehdi Hassan and framing it as a fair political debate signals that fascism is just another flavour of opinion, like preferring cats to dogs, and cats are better. I don't even want to hear it. If you like dogs, you're a fascist. I'm just joking, you're not a fascist if you like dogs. Like, I like dogs too, I just prefer cats, okay? Like, let's, calm it down a little. When an ideology that's built on dismantling democracy is treated as equally valid to defending democracy, that's not dialogue. It's a category error that erodes the boundaries of what is politically acceptable. And the fact that that dude felt comfortable enough to say that he's a fascist and the Nazis didn't really do much wrong shows us just what kind of state we are in at the moment.
Well, they persecuted the church a little bit. I'm not a fan of that, but... What about the persecution of the Jews?
Second, algorithmic amplification ensures that the most incendiary, sensational moments escape the bounds of the debate itself. Platforms like YouTube don't push Hassan's fact-checked arguments to the top of the argument. They'll push the sound bites about white genocide or immigration destroying America because outrage keeps viewers watching. And when I've seen clips of this, it's always been framed as, haha, look at the idiot fash, which, that's great. We're showing that these views are stupid and anti-democratic and, not ones that we should really think are palatable. But I'm well aware that social media often creates echo chambers. So if you are of the same views, that's what's going to be on your view page without that criticism or without that challenge to the view. It's just going to secure you in your already white nationalist views, and there we go. We haven't actually dismantled the extremist views at all. We've helped them spread. And this is where misinformation mechanics kick in. Hassan's point that Trump is, by definition, pro-crime, it wasn't countered with reason, but with semantic fog and whataboutism.
Hunter Biden was pardoned by his father. He did crack cocaine, and he had hookers there too.
But Biden pardoned people too. Is being a felon even that bad?
So when you say, are you okay that he's pro-crime? Sure, because you know what? We're changing the definition of what crime is.
What are we defining as crime? Lines designed not to rebuke, but to stall and confuse. Viewers sympathetic to these ideas often won't track the counter-argument. They'll just remember that someone fought back, and that's enough to reinforce their beliefs. And finally, victimhood narratives turn platforming into profit. The fascist participant claiming he lost his job over his politics, when reports actually suggest that this happened way before the debate, launched a GoFundMe. It's a familiar playbook. Decry collectivism while crowdfunding your bills, posture a silence while speaking to millions, and use that visibility to claim moral victory. In combination, these dynamics transform debate into recruitment theatre. Far-right movements have long understood that mainstream exposure is a gateway to legitimacy. Jubilee's format hands them that legitimacy under the banner of neutrality, with millions of views as an algorithmic bonus. What's presented as constructive dialogue often becomes instead a pipeline for normalising and monetising on extremism. And even the people that may be in the comments making really good sound arguments, they're just going to boost the videos up the algorithm even more to people that aren't going to engage in the arguments, aren't going to look at the counterpoints, and instead just going to look at confirmation bias. So I think we can say that Jubilee isn't running a town hall for democracy's sake. It's running a reality show with slightly better lighting. Political extremism isn't something to be confronted and dismantled here. It's content, and conflict is the product. Now, Guy Debord talked about this in The Society of the Spectacle. When everything becomes mediated through images, politics stops being a process and starts being a show. And Jubilee's debates are a perfect specimen. It's not about finding resolution, it's about crafting the perfect viral moment. The gasp, the applaud line, the clip that makes you smash share before your morning coffee. But this isn't just a YouTube problem, and to be fair, it's probably not even just a Jubilee problem. It's the entire political landscape. In the US and UK alike, elections haven't been won through policy depth or governing competence. They're won through entertainment value. We've had Boris Johnson bumbling around like a caricature from a posh sitcom, completely unnerving the public to his dangerous policies, his racism, his Islamophobia, because, it's just Boris. He's just a bumbling buffoon, right?
But that's kind of a lot.
And we've also had Donald Trump doing the same thing. Irony has worked to almost make Donald Trump not seem as threatening as he is to democracy and to policy. We've seen him turn campaign rallies into stand-up sets.
This is inflation. This is tic-tac. This is tic-tac. This is inflation. This is what's happened.
And this works. You know, memes, gaffes, performative stunts, they capture more public imagination than any white paper ever could. And you know, the left aren't completely free of this. You've got people like Jeremy Corbyn that go to fucking Glastonbury. But when he talks about his politics. That is at the front of what he's talking about.
Be together and recognise another world is possible if we come together to understand the power we've got and achieve that decent, better society where everyone matters. Thank you for inviting me here today. I'm proud to be here. Thank you very much, Glastonbury.
Yeah, he might utilise TikTok trends or Seven Nation Army chants, but at least his legislation is at the forefront of these performances. And this is where we see political power become less about persuasion and more about virality. A silly dance, a witty insult, a perfectly timed meme, you know, these moments win votes, define narratives and shape entire elections. And Jubilee's debates slot right into that dynamic. All these tactics, historical inaccuracies, white rhetoric, semantic fog, are perfect ingredients for viral spectacle. They create dramatic moments Jubilee can clip for TikTok, where outlandish statements rack up millions of views, making this less debate and more political theatre, mirroring the way that modern elections in the US and UK reward performance over policy. Jubilee's platform functions the same way, turning political and extremist talking points into consumable content that travels farther, faster and with fewer fact checks than a sober democratic discourse ever could. You know, and there's money in that because we do live in a capitalist society. Shock value sells, and the more incendiary the rhetoric, the more views roll in. 9 million views in over a week isn't democratic triumph then, it's ad revenue in fascist cosplay. Jubilee doesn't need to believe in fascism to profit from it, it just needs to book guests that do. This creates a neat little feedback loop. You know, extremists say something outrageous, Jubilee packages it with dramatic music, people flock and gawk at the ideological train wreck, and the platform makes more money. Rinse, repeat. In the spectacle economy, hate isn't just tolerated, it's monetized. And what Jubilee markets as discourse is content strategy, one where giving dangerous ideologies a stage isn't a glitch in the system, it's become a business model. So what's the alternative then? Do we just silence extremists and let them stew in their basement plotting away? Or do we hand them a microphone and hope that critical thinking saves the day? Unfortunately, neither extreme really works. Silencing can push dangerous ideas underground where they fester unchecked, you know, digital echo chambers and encrypted hate forums, but unchecked amplification, especially on platforms with millions of viewers, is like handing a megaphone to a pyromaniac and hoping that they sing lullabies instead. What's needed is a responsible middle ground, if such a unicorn exists in the attention economy. First, we need to get serious about framing and moderation. Extremist views don't get to wander around the stage like they belong there. They need to be explicitly called out and contextualised, not normalised as just another opinion. So let's ditch this nonsense of false balance. You know, sometimes an idea isn't just controversial, it's fundamentally incompatible with democracy itself. Fascism isn't a flavour of political ice cream, it's poison, and refusing to treat it as such just helps it metastasize. Finally, platforms should amplify the counter speech, not merely include it. I guess that kind of does away with the neutrality, but when it comes to, you know, democracy, maybe we should be pushing that a little bit more than fascism. You know, give the folks who actually know how to dismantle authoritarianism the spotlight in a way that's digestible for the greater public, without having to fight for that alongside someone that is literally shouting hail in the background. Ultimately, this isn't about censorship. It's about a media ethic that recognises power asymmetries and refuses to masquerade hate as a neutral debate. Because neutrality in this context isn't fairness, it's the fastest route to radicalisation polarisation and the slowest death for democracy. But hey, that's just my opinion. Thank you for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, leave a like and subscribe if you're new. Please let me know down below what your views are on political debate and platforming fascism, and if this video is probably just furthering it because I am also kind of sharing the views that are being shared. You know, it just seems like we can't win, but is addressing it better than ignoring it? I don't know. Let me know. And with that, I'll see you soon.